Meanwhile, far away from the great dog demon's castle, Kaede, the one-eyed Miko, was making her way back to the rock pit she called home on a white horse that the village she had helped gifted to her. It was in the afternoon that she was riding through a grassy field when she felt her horse stir upon them both seeing a thin figure in the distance. Kaede frowned as the figure with the scarred face approached her. "Kikyo," the one-eyed Miko greeted coolly. "Kaede, you're still alive?" The Moon Miko asked cruelly. "Watch ye tongue, you awful girl. I know what is to happen to you and Kagome this day during the solar eclipse." "I only wish I could have saved Kagome from this awful fate," Kaede said sadly. Kikyo smirked, as if there were any way out of this fate that our fathers have chosen for us. "Not even they can stop it now. Though it is unfortunate that I couldn't kill Kagome beforehand. Now the world will never belong only to the night." "How sad," the Sun Miko stated. "However, nothing is stopping me from killing you." Kaede looked down upon hearing this. "I will not run from you or your wrath, Kikyo, for I could not save kind and gentle Kagome. That guilt in that which lives in me is far more terrible than any death itself." Kikyo smiled wickedly. "Good." She then raised her hand towards Kaede and began to chant. "Crescent high above, evolving as you go, rise up what pain lies beneath, and let death's darkness grow. Bend it to my will, consume life's sunny glow, rise into the sky and let death's darkness grow. Let death's darkness grow." Kikyo chanted, as Kaede and her horse fell to the ground, gasping for air until their bodies felt limp. "Ha, wretched old fool," the Moon Miko chuckled, as she then pulled out her sword and severed the old Miko's head from her body. "I will take your eye patch as a trophy," Kikyo declared, ripping the eye patch off of Kaede's head and then kicking it to the side. She then looked up at the sky where the sun and moon were getting closer to each other. "It is almost time. At least I enjoyed my time on Earth while it lasted," she said to herself as she then placed her hand on her moon seed around her neck that was still scarred from Kagome's arrow. Back at the castle of the great dog demon, Izairai was true to her word, as she had thrown a grand feast for Kagome and her friends in honor of the Sun Miko's 18th birthday and to thank her for saving her life. But while everyone in the castle was enjoying the celebration, INUYASHA noticed how sad Kagome looked. She had barely touched the food she had been given. "I wonder what's up with Kagome," INUYASHA said out loud. "It's obvious, little brother. She's concerned about something regarding your feelings towards her," Sesshomaru stated, sitting on the half-demon's right. "What? Kagome doesn't have feelings towards me. She told me in Koga that she loves someone else," INUYASHA barked, earning a heavy sigh from Moroku, who was sitting on his left. What, you have a problem, you monk?" the dog-eared lord questioned. "Not at all. I have a big problem. You and Kagome clearly have something you each want to tell each other, but you're both too stupid and shy to even look at each other at this point," Moroku explained. "Hey, Kagome isn't stupid," INUYASHA protested, standing up. "Sesshomaru, Moroku, I'll take it from here." Izairai trailed off as she sat between her son and the monk. "INUYASHA, be honest with me. Do you love Kagome?" the mother asked softly, making INUYASHA blush as he stared down at his food. "Kagome is unlike any other girl I've ever met. She's kind, gentle, but she's also got a fighting spirit, and she knows when to use it. She didn't care that I was half-demon, and now I feel as if she's showing me she's not the only one who sees it. Ever since we've met, I have wanted to protect her from anything that might harm her." "Oh gods," INUYASHA breathed, realizing what this meant. Izairai smiled. "So I was right. Kagome is your destined mate." INUYASHA turned to her. "You knew?" he questioned. "Of course I did. A mother knows when her child is in love," she replied simply. "As do siblings and friends," Moroku added as he and Sesshomaru smiled reassuringly at INUYASHA. "Tell Miss Kagome how you feel," the older sibling said, slapping his younger brother on the back. "We know you can do it," Moroku encouraged. INUYASHA then looked up at his mother, brother, and best friend and smiled softly. "Thank you," he said as he stood up and walked over to Kagome, only that she was looking a bit strange. Her face looked very focused, and she stood up from the floor then began to walk out of the dining hall. Kagome? Sango and Shippo questioned as the two of them and Kilala began to follow. But the Sun Miko didn't even turn to look at them. Kagome, please, where are you? Ah! Sango began to question as she grabbed Kagome's shoulder, only to quickly retract it and cry out in pain. Sango, what happened? Moroku asked as he ran to the demon slayer who was holding her hand in great agony. Sango, your hand! It's burned! Shippo exclaimed, looking at Sango's hand from her shoulder while Moroku and INUYASHA rushed to her side. I thought I felt radiating heat off of her, but before I could ask her about it, she got up and left, Sango said. And her sun seed, it looked like it was glowing, Shippo added. I don't like this. Something's wrong, INUYASHA stated as he ran out of the dining hall to follow Kagome, who was now in the castle courtyard with Kikyo. Kagome! INUYASHA shouted as he whipped out Tetsaiga and jumped down from the balcony of the dining hall, ready to kill Kikyo, if only to have a purple barrier push him back from the two sisters. Kikyo laughed as if she had heard the most humor. Kagome! INUYASHA called. Kikyo, what's going on? What did you do to Kagome? INUYASHA demanded as he and everyone else rushed down to the courtyard and let Sesshomaru and Moroku help him up once they were beside him. Kikyo then laughed as she heard the most humorous thing. What's so funny, you bitch? INUYASHA spat angrily. Oh, I don't know if it's more funny or sad in this case, but you all clearly have no idea why me and my sister were born, Kikyo said. Then tell us, why were you and Kagome born? Moroku asked seriously. Well, isn't it obvious? We were born to become the next sun and moon, the Moon Miko stated. What? Sango questioned in complete shock, her face etched with horror. My moon seed and Kagome's sun seed are part of us. They hold a powerful spell that will turn me into the moon and Kagome into the sun. This is to happen since our fathers are to die today from eons of fighting each other on every solar eclipse. But even though Kagome was as clueless as the rest of you were about it, it appears she couldn't resist the pull of the eclipse. This event of the sun and moon is the reason I can come out to daylight this one time. This barrier was made by the sun and moon spirits, so none of you can interfere with our transformations, Kikyo said coolly. INUYASHA stood up in shock, but only for a moment. No, I won't let Kagome die! He shouted as he gripped his sword tightly and tried to strike down the barrier, but it wouldn't break. Kagome! INUYASHA yelled at the top of his lungs. Kagome blinked. INUYASHA? She called softly. She's now able to resist the barrier's mind control? How? Kikyo wondered out loud. INUYASHA! Kagome cried out, running over to the half-demon lord as she tried to break down the barrier with her hands, but it didn't work. Don't worry, sister. You aren't going to die. We're going to live forever only knowing each other. On every solar eclipse, that is. Kikyo clarified. No, this fate is worse than death, Kagome cried, tears forming in her beautiful brown eyes as she spoke. Kikyo only smiled. Kaede and said nearly the same thing. Before I killed her. She trailed off wickedly. Kagome gasped in horror. No, you didn't, she breathed, turning to her twin, whose smile only widened. I did, the Moon Miko stated as she took out Kaede's bloody eye patch. Kagome cried out in grief when she saw it. It doesn't matter. Kagome, there is no escape from this fate. I was drawn to you as you were to me, dear sister. The only difference is I have nothing to lose. You, on the other hand, will never be with anyone on earth ever again. You'd do well to just accept your fate. It is what you were born for, Kikyo stated. Kagome's tears finally made their way down her cheeks. No, I never got to tell any of my friends or INUYASHA how I felt. I never got to really live, Kagome thought to herself as she used all of her strength she could muster to turn away from her loved ones and on the other side of the barrier and walk to stand in front of Kikyo. When the eclipse starts, we will recite the eclipse incantation. It will only work once, and only when the sun and moon relics say it together. When the eclipse ends, our transformation will be complete, Kikyo clarified. Kagome looked down sadly. So this is it for me? She thought to herself, while all of her friends, even Izayoi, Rin, and Sesshomaru, tried to break the barrier from their side. But nothing they did seemed to work. Kagome! They all shouted. Oh no, look! Shippo pointed to the sky. Everyone looked up to see what they had been dreading for the past few minutes. The sun and moon were beginning to cross paths. "Let us begin the incantation, sister," Kikyo said, earning a sad nod from Kagome as they began to chant. "Sun and moon, moon and sun, it is time to end this feud and start one new. May the days and nights be few and start anew. Sun and moon, moon and sun, release the power that lies within thy seeds to start something new, something new," the twins chanted as a purple light, the same color as the barrier surrounded their bodies, glowed within their eyes and within the celestial seeds around their neck. After a short pause, the seeds burst. The light in Kikyo's eyes turned white, as did the glow around her body, and Kagome's glow turned golden, as did the glow on her eyes. Both girls then screamed in pain as the barrier itself shattered, as they themselves started to rise into the sky, still crying out in pain. "Kagome!" Inuyasha shouted as he jumped onto Kilala's back, who wasted no time flying up to the still rising Kagome. "Inuyasha!" the son of Miko cried out in agony, reaching out for the half-demon, whose hand was about to grasp hers, when suddenly both her and Kikyo shot up into the sky towards the sun and moon, which were getting closer to each other, and disappeared out of sight. "No!" Sango cried in a mix of fury and regret. "Sango, are you all right?" Moroku questioned as he caught the demon slayer, who was falling to her knees. "No, all this time protecting her, and for what? Just so she could end up being alone forever as her father's replacement?" Sango asked rhetorically, tears streaming down her cheeks as Kilala flew down to her side to comfort her and Shippo, who was also crying. If Kagome is supposed to take her father's place, shouldn't she be able to walk the earth during the day? Moroku questioned as Inuyasha got off of Kilala's back. "No, the moon girl said they were to become the next sun and moon. The legend says their fathers are only the spirits. Kagome and her sister will actually become the sun and moon," Shishomaru clarified, holding his weeping wife. "How can we stop this?" Rin asked in tears as she hugged her husband while Izayoi patted her back. "Perhaps I can help," a soft voice said. Everyone turned to see a ghost-like woman who had long, wavy black hair and a ponytail, wore Miko robes, and she had a familiar face. "Who are you?" Inuyasha demanded. "It's Kagome and Kikyo's mother, Lady Ami," Sango exclaimed as she and Kilala rushed over to the ghostly figure. "How are you here?" the demon slayer questioned, her voice still a bit weepy. "I've come here from the world of the dead to save Kagome, but I'm afraid it's too late for Kikyo. Unlike Kagome, she has no love within her heart. You see, I didn't know of my daughter's fates until today. You see, it appears fate itself is having a hard time with Kagome's destiny, for she is battling against the Sunseed's spell, which her sister cannot do with her Moonseed. I believe it is love that can save Kagome from this fate, since it was mine and Hirato's love that created her. I believe that love she holds for someone who returns that love can save her," Ami said. "Please tell us what we need to do. I'll do anything," Inuyasha stated. Ami looked at Inuyasha and then smiled softly at him. "You can save Kagome," she clarified. Inuyasha lowered his sword. "Me?" he questioned. Izayoi then looked between Lady Ami and her son and smiled. "It must be you, my son," she said. "Tell me what I have to do then," Inuyasha said with no hesitation. "I will pass on what power I have left, and with this power you will be able to withstand the power of the sun. Hopefully save Kagome as well. Trust what you feel towards my daughter and you will prevail." Lady Ami trailed off as her ghostly body evaporated into pink light and went into Inuyasha's chest, lifting him towards the sun and moon. "Moroku, Shippo, watch after Sango and Kilala. I'll be back until me and Kagome get back. I'll bring her back, Sango and Kilala. Don't worry," the half-demon lord called out, making the demon slayer and the twin-tailed Neko look up at him. "I promise I'll bring Kagome back," he said. Sango and Kilala smiled hopefully as they watched Inuyasha shoot up towards the sun and moon and vanish from sight. "We know you will," Sango said softly as Kilala meowed in agreement.